Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the presentation of our colors and also for the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, on the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Chris Nordyke. I'm the Richard Nixon Foundation's Director of Events. It's my pleasure to welcome you all here to the Richard Nixon Presidential Library and Museum for today's solemn ceremony. Please allow me to thank the Orange County Fire Authority Pipes and Drums, Honor Guard, the U.S. Marine 1st Intelligence Battalion, and Melanie Pedro for the spectacular program open, presentation of colors, and national anthem. You guys did a terrific job. Thank you very much. We gather here today to reflect on the tragic events that happened 14 years ago. And we honor the innocent who lost their lives and pay tribute to those who gave their lives so that so many others may live. Please join me in a moment of silence in their honor. Now, next we will have our invocation. Please welcome me in joining Marine Chaplain Guy Lee, who will give that invocation. Chaplain Lee is a California native, and he is Force Chaplain of the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force, based out of Camp Pendleton. From 2012 to 2013, he served in Southwest Afghanistan as a senior chaplain for the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force Forward, as part of Operation Enduring Freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, Chaplain Guy Lee.
Thank you. Will you join me in a word of prayer? Lord, sometimes history and location converge in one place. When that happens, we're reminded that global events, those of such significance that they define our history, are often experienced by people in very local ways. And that's the case today, Father. We're gathered before you in this beautiful library which commemorates the public service of President Nixon. Surrounded by reminders of his public and private life, we can't help but be challenged by his story of individual service and support of the greater common good. As it was for President Nixon, that commitment takes many forms, from military and government service in the public sphere to civic engagement in the private life. So it's appropriate, Lord, that in this place we pause to remember the sacrifice of patriots, the victims who died on that fateful day 14 years ago, the valiant responders who intervened in the aftermath, and the defenders of our freedom who serve overseas and at home to protect our national way of life. Lord, we honor all those who have given their lives to ensure that the fateful events that took place in Lower Manhattan, the Pentagon, and Shanksville are never again repeated. We ask for your grace to be with the families of those who were lost that day, as well as for the first responders who protected and served us then, even as they continue to do so now. We also ask your blessings on those who have responded since then by committing themselves to protect and serve our country. We're grateful for their selflessness, knowing that their families also share in that sacrifice. Grant them strength when the demands of service and separation from their families cause them to grow weary. Refresh their resolve so they can continue to serve over the long haul and cause freedom and righteousness to prevail. Lord, thank you for meeting us on this solemn day of remembrance in this very important place of history and heritage for our nation. We ask this in your most holy name. Amen.
Don't worry, there's a lot more of that coming. Our next speaker is a man who has dedicated nearly 3 decades to public service. Assistant Sheriff Don Barnes joined the Orange County Sheriff's Department in 1988 and is a graduate of the FBI National Academy, the Senior Management Institute for Policing, the Harvard Kennedy Business School's Leadership in Crisis, and many other highly specialized programs. Throughout his career, he has served as an area commander for field operations and investigative services, chief of police services for the city of Lake Forest, and as the head of professional services command. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Assistant Sheriff Don Barnes.
Good morning. The month of September has traditionally been a time of transition. The change of summer to fall, the start of a new school year, and for some parents taking children off to college, the end of baseball season, the start of football season. However, for the past 14 years, it has also been a time touched with sadness as we mark the anniversary of one of the most tragic days in American history. To this day, and for many more to come, 9/11 remains an event that has profoundly impacted the way we will live our lives. Often in speeches like this, one will recount where they were on September 11th, 2001. For me, I was a sergeant working the midnight shift and had just arrived home from a previous night's work. My wife woke me a few hours later after I'd fallen asleep, and together we watched as the first of the 2 towers collapsed to the ground, taking so many lives and dreams with it. Like many of you, I realized that the world as we knew it had been changed forever. But what I remember most about that time is how our nation responded. Americans came together like no time I had ever seen. Here in Orange County, we felt the tragedies in New York, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C. as if they had happened in our own communities. A nation so large and so diverse became one. We may not have personally known the victims, but we felt their loss as if they were members of our own families. We saw their photos, and they were as much our own mother or father, sister or brother or child, because they were just like us, just normal, ordinary people living life that day. In the days following the attack, we comforted one another and moved forward with a sense of strong resolve. We moved forward with a commitment to defend our freedoms and our way of life. We moved forward with determination to defeat the evil ideology of those who attacked us. And we moved forward with a vow to never forget what happened on that Tuesday in September. 14 years removed from that day, we still remain engaged in the war against terror. That war has claimed thousands of civilians' lives, nearly 7,000 servicemen and women's lives, and tens of thousands more being injured, ever reminding us that freedom isn't free. Freedom comes at a tremendous cost. This has been the lengthiest war our country has ever fought. I think of my nephew, Christopher, who on 9/11 had just begun his first week of kindergarten. He was 5 years old. Today, he is a proud Marine preparing to enter the same war that began 14 years ago. For him, he has only known an America at war, and he committed at an early age to make a difference serving his country, like so many other young adults have vowed to do. We are fortunate to continue to have Americans willing to risk their lives in the struggle to preserve our freedom. But over time, will we let the September 11th attacks become just another entry into our history books? Of course, I know that many of you here today, evident by your presence, remain just as committed to this cause today as you did in 2001. I fear, however, that many others have moved on. They must be reminded that the threat remains. Just because another 9/11 hasn't occurred doesn't mean it isn't due to our enemy's lack of trying. Many plans have been thwarted, but the threat is as real today as it was 14 years ago. and all Americans have a responsibility to protect our homeland. As the namesake of this library, President Richard Nixon said in his inaugural address, "The essence of freedom is that each of us shares in the shaping of his destiny." So I ask you, what role do you play? How can you make a difference? First and foremost, we must continue to support our troops and the American Armed Services who are fighting abroad. We can support them by volunteering our time or donating to organizations that support the military, veterans, and their families. We can pray for their safety and for their safe return. And it's oftentimes a simple thank you to those in uniform will be enough to carry them forward. It is their fight thousands of miles away that allow us to enjoy the freedoms and liberties here at home. Second, support those who preserve our freedoms here at home, your local law enforcement and firefighters. We remain diligent in the fight against terrorism. You may be unaware, but the Orange County Intelligence Assessment Center is one of only 5 terrorism fusion centers in the state and the only county with its own. We have hundreds of terrorism liaison officers who are trained in anti-terrorism, and local law enforcement participates in several multi-agency state and federal task forces protecting our homeland, such as the Joint Terrorism Task Force and Operation Stone Garden. We have not forgotten, and we will remain diligent in preserving your safety. Your support of law enforcement goes a long way in helping us do a better job. Finally, teach your children and grandchildren what it means to be an American. The next generation will not be committed to preserving our freedom unless they understand why America is worth fighting for. Make sure our children know the history of this country, why the Revolutionary War was fought, Lincoln's speech at Gettysburg, the valor of the soldiers on D-Day, and the sacrifice of thousands of Americans on 9/11 and the many years since then. We should be proud of our ideals and our history and must pass on that pride to the next generation. President Reagan eloquently summarized this very ideal, stating, "Freedom is not something to be secured in any moment of time. We must struggle to preserve it every day. And freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction." In the years ahead, we will continue to mark this day and remember those who lost their lives in the attacks against us and those who courageously gave their lives in the war protecting us. September 11th, 2001 is a day we must never forget, not ever. May God bless you, bless our soldiers, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
I'd like to take this time to introduce another leading representative of Orange County. Chris Concepcion is a division chief of the Orange County Fire Authority and has been since 1991. Chris has served as a paramedic, a fire captain, a battalion chief, and now represents the northeast part of the county as division chief, which includes the cities of Placentia, Tustin, and Yorba Linda. Ladies and gentlemen, our division chief, Chris Concepcion.
Good morning. I'm both humbled and honored to be able to say a couple of words today, especially after I heard who else was speaking. I love events like this because it really shows how great it is to live in this great country of ours, especially for someone like me that was not born in the United States, but still getting to live the American dream, complete with mortgage and credit cards. September 11th, 2001 was a weekday morning, just like today. As people went about to start their business day, 19 men had terror in their mind. They hijacked 4 planes, used them as weapons, and forever changed our way of life. I know it changed mine significantly. What started out as a sunny day in New York turned into one of the darkest days in our nation's history. We will never forget those terrible images of the planes crashing into the World Trade Centers, of the flames shooting from the Pentagon, of United Flight 93 wreckage strewn about a field in Pennsylvania. I am sure, like you, I will never forget how my heart sank as I watched the towers come crashing down. In all, nearly 3,000 people were killed that day, amongst them 343 firefighters and 60 officers from the NYPD and the Port Authority Police. On the morning of September 11, 2001, I was finishing a shift at Fire Station 4 in Irvine, and I was irritated because we got an early morning call to babysit a car that had a fuel leak. While we were waiting for the tow truck, someone told me that a plane had crashed into one of the World Trade Center towers. They added that they thought it was an accident. After we cleared the call, we got back into the station, and we see the rest of the firefighters staring blankly at the TV, just in time to watch the second plane crash into the other tower. I can remember my good friend, a fire captain that was relieving me that morning, telling me, "Chris, this is no accident. This is going to result in thousands dead." Although we witnessed the darkest parts of humanity on that day, we also witnessed the greatest part of the human spirit. In the days following the attacks, we all saw our nation come together. We heard the story of Flight 93, passengers banding together to fight back against the terrorists. Their actions kept that plane from hitting its original target. We heard many other stories of bravery that day, of the firefighters, police officers, and civilians who all pitched in to help evacuate the towers and the Pentagon. Their selfless actions undoubtedly saved thousands of lives. Think back to those images 14 years ago. How did it make us feel? What did it cause us to do? First, we all promised to never forget. As a nation, we became more aware. We became more vigilant. First responders leapt into action to prevent a tragedy such as 9/11 from ever happening again. Firefighters, police officers, healthcare workers, and other responders learned to work together and learned the importance of multidisciplined teams. It's hard to believe it's been 14 years. The images, both the evil and the good, have started to fade from our memories. We cannot let this happen. There are still terrorists out there. They are still plotting and planning. They still hate our way of life and our American ideals. We must continue to plan and equip and train our responders. We cannot become complacent. I'm asking each of you to take a little time to reflect on the actions of the terrorists and what they did to us as a nation, to our way of life. Remember the horrific images, the sheer evil of the fiery collapsing towers. Then take time to remember the power of the human spirit, the acts of bravery and selflessness by the passengers of United Flight 93, by the firefighters, the police officers, and the civilians that day. Most importantly, remember our promise to never forget. In a speech shortly after 9/11, President Bush said, Time is passing, yet for the United States of America, there will be no forgetting September 11th. We will remember every rescuer who died in honor. We will remember every family that lives in grief. We will remember the fire and the ash, last phone calls, the funerals of the children. Let us heed the words of President Bush. Let us keep these images in our mind, both the evil and the good. It will help us to stay aware and vigilant. It will help us to continue to plan and to train. Remember our promise. Let us never forget. And God bless America.
As you all walked in today, you noticed that exhibit down the South Colonnade, the Global War on Terror Wall of Remembrance. The man responsible for getting that here is here today. He's our next speaker, and he's going to talk the significance of the Wall of Remembrance and introduce our final speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Nichols.
First off, I want to thank the Nixon Foundation for allowing us to have the Wall of Remembrance in such an amazing setting. Majestic, truthfully an honor. It's the first presidential library we've had a chance to set up in. We've been all over the country. So I want to thank the foundation for having us out to do this and to bring it here to my hometown because I'm out of Placentia. So it's an honor to be here. This has been a mission I've been on for a long time, and I couldn't have done it without my loving wife, who has a lot of time, has to play single mom while I'm traveling around the country. My parents, who raised me properly and taught me the value of the military and the value of first responders, and living in a house with a Vietnam veteran who served his country and earned 2 Purple Hearts and a Bronze Star with Valor. I had an opportunity to be around him. To my friend and guy that rides with me around the country, United States Marine, Derek Hendershot. Derek has done 3 years voluntarily going around this country 8 months out of every year as a volunteer, traveling with the memorial and helping heal wounds that are internal all over this country, not just here, not just in New York, not the Pentagon, and not just in Shanksville, but all over the country. And Derek has been such a major blessing in my life, and the blessing in many other lives. National Commander James Pigeon from AMVETS, who just accepted this as his National Commander's project, which will give us enough funding for this thing to keep going so that my wife and I don't have to write any more checks for it, which I'm sure she loves, and I love, trust me. And all of you guests that took the time out of your day to come here. Everybody asked me why the Wall of Remembrance, why we started this, what came about. My mom, for a birthday present, wanted to take me to New York on October 11th, 2001. 30 days to the day. We could have been on one of those flights. And she didn't want to go after the towers fell and we had the attacks, and we all know how that day went. And I said, no, we need to go. We need to go. She goes, but all of New York's going to be closed. And I'm like, no, we need to go. We need to change our mission. So I did a thing. I had a sign business back then. I did a thing called 1,000 Square Feet of Love. We created about 14 or 15 banners that were 40 feet long and 3 feet high and had well over 100,000 signatures from Californians, all from Southern California to Northern California up into Oregon. And we were able to take your guys' love to New York. And we went to, as our mission, we went to every single fire department, and we went to the main police headquarters for the NYPD and dropped off these banners to each and every one of them. And I can't tell you what their faces look like. Their faces, after 30 days, the funerals had just started, their faces were hollow and empty and didn't know what to do. And you look at them and you just want to help them, you want to hug them. And you couldn't. So then life moves on. We get back from New York, and of course we go into combat. And Buddy's like my Stephen and some of my other friends that went off into combat. And I started getting involved with other veterans issues and started working with some of our veterans coming home that were wounded and seeing some of our families that are around. And I brought the Vietnam Wall to the city of Orange. And I realized, besides the civilian side of this, we have a large military presence that we've been losing. And they're hurting. And we didn't want them to wait as long as it took the Vietnam veterans to get a memorial to mourn at and to remember their friends by. Because when you're in combat, you don't get to say goodbye. You don't have that opportunity. You have to fight on. So you don't get to pay that tribute until you get home. So we decided, myself and David Brown, who's also a United States Marine, decided to put a memorial together, fund it, build it, and make it available to the public for 9/11/11, for the 10-year remembrance, for that day and that day only. And then for a year straight, Derek Endershot got on the phone and kept bugging me to bring it to Cypress College, and I agreed, okay, I need to take it to Cypress College. And then from there, he says, hey, this thing needs to travel around the country. And I said, I'm married, I have 2 kids. I can't just travel around the country, you know. I got to figure out where the funds are going to come from and everything else. And I said, but if you'll drive it, we'll do it. And he says, okay, I'll drive it. And I went, oh, no. So I said, okay, well, we're gonna have to deal with this now. So Derek literally graduated from college off of his GI Bill, walked off the stage, got on a plane and met me in Lincoln, Nebraska, because I had already been to 2 locations, and he was meeting me for the 3rd one to take over command of escorting our 10,524 fallen that are represented on that memorial. We've traveled since then 85,000 miles. We've been to 35 states. This is now the 58th setup of a wall that was only built to go up once. And it just keeps going on. It's been blown over, it's been destroyed. We've had panels broken. If you notice, some of them are a different color. That's because they've been replaced. We've had a chance to make relationships with families and friends all over this country. The families that I want to recognize today are our Gold Star families. I call them my Gold Star moms and my Gold Star dads, and I always greet them with a big hug and a big smile, and I tell them that no matter what goes on in life, you need to know that your loved ones are remembered, and they will never be forgotten for as long as I'm alive. There was a story that I'll give you out of New York when we were in Long Island, New York, and you have 343 first responders that died on that day, and for all those that don't know, there's been over 1,000 that have died since from the effects of that day. It's not in the news, they won't tell it, but I know personal account that there's been over 1,000 of them. There was a first responder that came up to me, NYPD officer, and this is the story of the 3 sisters. She walked up to me and she says, I had a sister on 9/11 in the North Tower. I had a sister in the South Tower. She was on foot patrol 2 blocks away from the towers. That morning, the North Tower was struck, and it was struck just below where her one sister was in the North Tower. She tried calling her, tried to reach her, couldn't reach her. Couldn't get her cell phone, couldn't get hold of her. She called her other sister, who she thought was at the time in the South Tower, and she says, are you okay? Where are you at? And she says, I'm down at the convenience store. I was running late this morning because she had just seen her daughter off to boot camp for the Army. She'd gone up to her desk and realized that she had forgotten her cigarettes, of all things. She went downstairs, went to the convenience store, and that's when the North Tower had been hit. And so her sister said, get out of the area. There's something going on. We don't know what it is yet. We think it's a plane that just hit the tower, but we're not sure. And at that very time, the South Tower was struck. The sister had gotten out of the area. The police officer, she went to the North Tower where her other sister was. She was standing at the bottom of the tower, and she realized, I've got to run up 101 flights to get to my sister. and she had her utility belt on, which I'm sure our officers here know what it's like to have to run stairs with a utility belt. She's trying to figure out where to put it. She goes to take it off, and she's stashing it. She's recalling different sounds that took place from people that had jumped out of the towers. And just as she was putting her belt tucked up underneath of a stairwell, she heard a building cracking. She heard the sound of cracking. And she started running. She just ran as hard and as fast as she could away from the area. She says her utility belt was still buried in the rubble somewhere. And it was the south tower that had fell, because the south tower, even though it was struck second, it fell first. And then after that, the north tower fell. So that day there were 3 sisters, 2 alive, 1 we lost. These are some of the stories of the wall, of the memorial that we have. And we receive thousands of these, and we talk to thousands of people. And it's very important for the educators that are in this room, please educate our youth. That's all we can ask for in this world. Educate our youth. We don't want to repeat history. Nobody wants to repeat history. So with that, I want to transition. There's people in the military that volunteered service. One in particular, the reason why I want to introduce him is he's a good friend of mine, and he represents the millions over these last 14 years that have volunteered. Students, get that. They volunteered. In Vietnam, they were drafted, and some volunteered. This whole group is all volunteer. They volunteered to serve and protect our freedoms. This gentleman in particular was in the invasion of Iraq in 2003, 2004. Literally tip of the spear. The only thing in front of his group going through Iraq was an Abrams tank. He was a recon scout for 2nd LAR. He's a United States Marine. He was like I said, he was in the invasion of Iraq. He was also in the invasion of the Helmand province in Afghanistan in 2004. He's now a country recording artist and telling his story around the country about his service and about the battle that we fight back here at home. He was also the former national spokesperson for Veterans Affairs to tell his story, and I'm proud, as a friend, to introduce Stephen Cochran.
Well, I'm very honored to be here this afternoon, and thank you, JR. Thank you, everybody who spoke before of us. September 11th, 14 years ago, changed my life like it did so many others. I was a junior in college at Western Kentucky University, and the most important thing I had to do was be at class by noon. And, like so many other Marines who came before me, being a Marine wasn't something I'd strive to do my whole life. I knew the Marine Corps was great, and I had some family members who had served in it, but it wasn't something that I thought I was going to do. I wanted to be a country music singer-songwriter. But ladies and gentlemen, this is the only country where you can take a dream and turn it into your career. My father's a songwriter, but he's also a soldier. So he always drove patriotism into me, but he also made sure that I knew that if this country ever needed me to stand up and fight for it, that I was willing to do that. So after getting a little overserved at my fraternity house, the next morning I got up and I went to the Marine Corps recruiter, and I went in and he said, "Dear God, son, how much have you drank today?" And I said, "I didn't drink anything today, sir, but I drank a whole hell of a lot last night." And he said, "Well, why don't you go home, finish your 24 credit hours that you have to graduate, and come back in as an officer?" And I said, "Sir, the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force have recruiting offices in this strip mall as well. You'll be the one that decides whether I become a Marine or not." And so he said, "Let's go take an ASVAB." So I took that, and he said, "Hey, you can pick any job in the Marine Corps that you want. Don't go infantry." And anybody that's seen that commercial where the Marine comes out of the swamp with the tiger stripe cami paint on, I saw that one. I said, "That's what I want to do." And he said, "Son, that's infantry, man. You got to go infantry to become reconnaissance." And I told you that's not what you want to do. So 9 months later, there I sit in Kuwait, 0311, attached, second light armored reconnaissance as a recon scout ready to invade Iraq. And I have to admit, I thought, man, you have made some mistakes. However, once we entered the country and we saw the torment that the people were living through, we knew that we had not made a mistake. We did 112 missions, including the Battle of Nasiriyah, the Battle of the Coil, which was the longest battle that we'd had since Vietnam, 13 and a half hours. We went on, I said, to do 111 missions all the way up to Tikrit, and we lost no men. We were the first special operations unit to come back with 0 casualties. And in that battle, that 13-hour battle, there were 302 enemy casualties, and they ambushed us. We had 0. We came home, and we returned on the 22nd MEU to Afghanistan. We was a part of BLT-16, and we were told as we got to Afghanistan that we would be the first unit to enter the Helmand province, which is where the Russians actually had lost the war to the Afghanis. Combat was not something that we were scared of. We had done that. What frightened us was how long can you sustain this level of combat and not lose one? We only work in 3-man teams, 6-man sections, so we were very, very tight. And we knew that losing one of us could upset the whole morale, the esprit de corps. And I'd like to say that we took the Helmand province and that we came out just as victorious and as one unit as we were in Iraq, but we didn't. This is the first Marine that was killed in Afghanistan. His name was Corporal Ron Payne, and he's on panel 10 on the wall outside. Like JR said, you don't get a chance to say goodbye. When you're ambushed 26 on 5, which is what they were that night, and even when we got to them, it's 26 on 8. Mission completion becomes before all else. So Ron was gone, and when we returned home, we got to go to his memorial and spend some time with him. However, it wasn't until I saw that wall that I realized he's really gone. And all these other names open up. And you see them and you go, this is someone's brother, sister, father. Some of these men never got to meet their children. Those names are all attached to people, Marines, sailors, soldiers, airmen, children who died in those plane crashes on 9/11. And I wear the patch infidel and veteran because I wear this because I'm still just as pissed off today as I was 14 years ago. After Ron was killed, it was a month later, I was injured myself. I broke my back from L1 to L5, was left paralyzed from the waist down. We were doing convoy security on the way out of Afghanistan, or on the way out of the Helmand into Kandahar, and my vehicle struck a hole that had an anti-tank mine in it before that they had not covered up, which threw me off an LAV onto another LAV where I broke my SAPI plate in half. A SAPI plate is a steel plate that stops machine gun fire, up to machine gun fire. It broke it in half, and then my L1 to L5, leaving me paralyzed from the waist down. They told me I would never walk again in Bethesda, Maryland. And literally, I just walked to prove that you can't tell a Marine anything, is what it is. We have a great hospital in Nashville, Tennessee, and this is why I tell you there is a higher power out there, and I've seen it happen in combat, and I'm sure you carry it with you on the streets as well. Like I told you at the beginning of this story, I had signed a record deal, and the singer-songwriter was what I was going to do. Well, I'm laying in Bethesda. They told me I never going to walk again. But the only surgeon who could try this experimental surgery called a kyphoplasty on me was at Vanderbilt Hospital in Nashville, Tennessee, where I came from. So I went back. I had the surgery. They put 4 pounds of cement epoxy in my back. 4 days after the surgery, I had the first sensations in my legs that I had 9 months. 6 months of intense therapy and some physical therapists who never want to see me again. I made up cuss words. They had me back on my feet. A year after they told me that I would never walk again, I signed my first record deal. A year and a half after that, we had our first top 40 on country radio. It was called Friday Night Fireside. And then followed by our next top 40 called Thinking I'm Drinking. Kids, don't listen to that one. And then our last, which was called Walmart Flowers. But country radio kept asking for, when are you going to write something about the war? When are you going to write something about the war? We want to hear about the war. I will never write a war song. I did not go and fight in Iraq and Afghanistan to bring that home to give to you. We do that so that you don't have to do that. And all the veterans here sure as hell don't want to watch a war song or hear a war video. So every video that I have, or every song that I'm writing from now on, is about the war we're losing. Our men and women in uniform are fully capable of handling the wars overseas. But we are losing a war here at home. We have 22 veterans a day committing suicide. Post-traumatic stress is as much a part of this war on terror as the terrorists who bombed us 14 years ago. Because if we didn't have to go to war, these men and women would not be fighting this battle inside of themselves every day. If we were losing 22 of anything else in this country, you would see it on every news channel, but we literally are losing 22 veterans a day to suicide, and you barely hear about it. It's time that we never forget the men and women that are on that wall. But let's start fighting for the men and women who are still here, who are fighting for a cure for post-traumatic stress. I have a song I want to play. It's called Keep On, and it's about that very topic. It's about coming back home to the United States and trying to get back into the civilian population. And I really wrote it for the civilian population. A veteran knows what it feels like to come home and not feel like he's himself, or that he's crazy, or that they don't understand me. I was just talking to the vice sheriff about, there's that one moment, even in our first responders and veterans, where you tell a story. And you and your buddies might have found humor in it. But then you see that one person in your circle go, oh my God, that's not funny. And you stop. You stop telling stories. You stop talking. They don't get me. So why am I going to go through the hassle of telling you what an SOP means or what LAR means or all our analogies? Because at the end of it, you're just going to think I'm crazy. So I'd rather not. So this song's called Keep On, y'all, and I hope it means as much to you as it does to me. Thank you for having me today. My name's Stephen Cochran. Semper Fi. Rock. I knew who I was, that's not who I am. I knew how I got here, this was not my plan, so I keep on lying to myself. Well, y'all see me hurting, love me just the same. Not the same person, but I answer to my name, and I keep on lying to myself. Yeah, I keep lying, but don't you see that I'm not the man you thought I was, but I was not supposed to be who I am. But just understand, this is me, and I can't stop lying to myself. I made more promises that I can never keep. I don't know why, but I still got these rings, and I keep on lying to myself. I guess I do lonely more than I do now. I kill my pain at closing time with one more shot, and I keep on lying to myself. Yeah, I keep lying, But don't you see that I'm not the man you thought I was, but I was not supposed to be who I am. But just understand that this is me. Well, they've taken me for granted, and now I'm on my own. Well, they said that I'd come back, but this is not my home. So I keep on lying to myself. Oh, I keep on lying. Yeah, I keep lying. But don't you see that I'm not the man you thought I was, but I was not supposed to be who I am. But just understand that this is me. Oh, and I can't stop lying to myself. Thank you. God bless the United States of America and the men and women who serve this country. Thank you, sir. Hoorah.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Stephen, for the moving words and for the great piece. The ceremony's been included a lot of musical elements, one by Richard, but I haven't acknowledged the groups to my side, and this ceremony wouldn't be as moving as it is each year without them. The Villa Park High School Symphonic Band, the Orange High School Concert Choir, and the Orange Community Master Chorale, and the Santa Ana Singers from Santa Ana College make this program very special each year. I want to thank them, and I want to thank their directors, Mike Short and Chuck J. They are a huge part of this program and programming throughout the year. They're going to conclude the ceremony with a very dramatic Battle Hymn of the Republic, one of my favorites.